Everyone is talking about the Manosphere right now and the documentary that just came out on Netflix. But almost no one is talking about what it's actually doing to your brain while you watch it. And once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it because the real story isn't the content itself. It's what happens inside of your nervous system when you engage with it and what your brain starts to learn from that engagement over time. And before I even get into that, I want to welcome you back. I'm Dr. Trish Leigh. Welcome back to the podcast. I gotta tell you, this one is going to be a doozy. So grab your Netflix password if you dare to look underneath the surface and a cup of coffee, because we're not just talking about what's in the documentary. We are going to talk about what it is doing to you. And the thing that stood out immediately to me when I started watching the conversation unfold wasn't even the content. It was the reaction to it, because people either strongly agree with it or they strongly push back against it. There's almost no neutral space. And when I see that kind of polarization, I don't just think about what's being said. Of course, I think about, from a neuroscience perspective, the kind of state that the content is putting the brain into. Because the better question isn't, do you agree with it or not? The question is, what is your brain doing while you watch it? And when you zoom out, you realize this isn't just a documentary. You see the same pattern in the news, on social media, even in how people talk about relationships these days, where everything feels more intense, more certain, more reactive. And the question I keep coming back to is this: what is this type of content doing to us neurologically? You know, it's tough. If you look at the world right now, war, conflict, uncertainty, economic pressure, it's constant. And it's not just the presence of it, it's the delivery of it, because it's designed to keep you engaged and to hold your attention. But your brain isn't built for this level of continuous high-level input. So what happens is your baseline starts to shift. You become more alert, more reactive, more keyed and ramped up. And that state doesn't just turn off when you stop watching it. It carries over into everything, into how you think, how you feel, how you respond. And at some point, you're not just consuming intensity, you're living in it. And then you layer something like the Manosphere on top of that, and this is where it gets really interesting, but from my perspective, slightly terrifying. Because that content doesn't just stimulate your brain, it organizes it. It gives structure and direction and certainty. It tells you what matters, what to pursue, and how to win. And for a brain that's already overactivated from everything else that's going on, that can feel incredibly grounding at first, like finally something makes sense. But what most people don't stop to consider or to ask is whether it's actually clarity or if it's just another form of activation. Because what's really happening is a shift in state. The brain moves into a more activated mode, more focused, more driven, more locked in. And that can feel like alignment, like you figured something out, but it's not the same as regulation. It's still a heightened state, and heightened states don't sustain themselves. So the brain starts looking for ways to recreate that feeling again and again and again. That's where dopamine comes in. And this is where people misunderstand what's happening, because dopamine isn't about pleasure. It's actually about pursuit. It's how your brain decides what matters and what to move toward and what's worth your effort. So when that system is repeatedly activated, the brain begins to prioritize whatever consistently produces that state. Not because you're consciously choosing it, hear me, but because your brain has learned it. And underneath all of this, there's another layer that people don't always see directly. But once you clearly see it, you can start looking for it. Because a lot of this content is organized around desirability, access, and sexual success. Sometimes subtly, but often it's very explicit. Whether it's conversations about multiple partners or status tied to access or monetization through platforms like OnlyFans. And from a brain perspective, that matters because those signals overlap with the same systems shaped by pornography, novelty, variation, rapid reward. So now you have something very powerful happening at the same time. You have a cultural narrative telling you what to become and a reward system being trained on how stimulation should feel, both distorted. And when those two align, the brain doesn't just observe it anymore. It begins to organize around it, not consciously, but neurologically as a new pattern. And repeated exposure to that pattern is what turns influence into conditioning. And over time, that changes things. Not just what you think and not just how you function. You might notice that motivation feels inconsistent. Focus is harder to maintain. And the things that used to feel engaging don't hit the same way anymore. In your relationships, this can become incredibly obvious because relationships, they don't operate on intensity and constant stimulation, at least in a healthy way. They operate on presence, attunement, and regulation. And if the brain has adapted to novelty and speed and high reward, real connection can feel slower, less stimulating, and harder to stay engaged with. This can even affect attraction and sexual responsiveness because those systems are regulated by the same neural networks. So again, this isn't a character issue or a lack of discipline. It's a neuro-regulation issue. The brain has adapted to an environment that is very different from the one required for sustained connection, focus, and performance, especially within intimacy. So instead of asking whether this content is good or bad, a much more useful question is this: what state does this content put my brain into when I'm consuming it? And what is it learning from this state? Because your brain doesn't just process information, it adapts to patterns. And that's the work that I do, helping people move out of constant stimulation, reactivity, and inconsistency, and instead into stability, focus, and control. And we can actually measure how the brain is functioning and train it to operate differently. That's what my neuroregulation program using neurofeedback allows us to do. It doesn't remove ambition. It restores the brain's ability to sustain it. And once you understand what your brain is adapting to, you're not just reacting to the world anymore. Now you're choosing intentionally how you engage with it. And my friend, that changes everything. Okay, if you want more information, please go over to drtrishleigh.com, check out my programs, schedule a meeting with me. I would love to help. And until next time, control your brain, or it will in fact control you. I'll see you next time.